Hi, welcome back to our next talk. We have David Schwartz from Ripple and Camila from
The Defiant.
Defiant. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much, and please enjoy your talk.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here at ETH Denver with David from Ripple. I'm Camila, the founder of The Defiant, the best source of DeFi information. And this panel is all about how Ripple is increasing programmability and smart contracts capabilities. So, David, let's start by, if you could introduce how Ripple is developing XRP Ledger and the XRPL EVM, and how these two will improve programmability on Ripple.
Sure. So I'm David Schwartz. I'm CTO at Ripple. We're one of the main developers for the XRPL, XRP Ledger. It's a blockchain, started in, the first blockchain that wasn't a clone of Bitcoin. Thank you. So the XRP Ledger is a little bit different. It's sitting somewhere sort of between in functionality between what Bitcoin does and what Ethereum does. It has more functionality than Bitcoin. Bitcoin, really, all you can do with Bitcoin is move Bitcoin around. Ethereum is a full Turing-complete smart contract platform where you can do almost literally anything. And there's advantages and disadvantages of both approaches. The XRP Ledger kind of sketches out a middle path between those two. So it has fixed function transactors that perform functions like a decentralized exchange, tokenized real-world assets, automated market makers. We're working on technology for things like lending pools, and so on. The difference is, if you have a smart contract, you have the problem of having to develop the smart contract, you have the risk associated with bugs in the smart contract, and users don't necessarily know what they're agreeing to when they use a smart contract. I'm sure you've all familiar with All My Apes Are Gone, where someone wanted to do something that they needed to agree to a smart contract to do, and they couldn't audit the functionality of that smart contract. The XRP Ledger doesn't implement its functionality through smart contracts, and so doesn't have those risks, but doesn't get those benefits either. So we're doing two things to try to sort of ease that trade-off. One of them is the EVM sidechain, which is an EVM chain that supports, the same smart contracts as Ethereum does. So if you want to do something that's easy to do in a smart contract, you could just deploy it on the sidechain and get all that functionality. But you have the downsides of that too. You have the divided liquidity. There'll be multiple DEXs that will each have their own liquidity. There'll be cost, transaction speed, and the need to agree to smart contracts to use it. On the XRP Ledger side, to get some of the benefits of smart contracts without some of the costs, we're looking to add programmability sort of at the margin. So if the automated market maker almost but not quite does what you want, or you want to issue tokenized real-world assets, which the XRP Ledger supports, but you have some unusual way that dividends are distributed, you'll be able to use smart contracts to provide additional functionality where you need it without having to have yet another chain that has a full-blown smart contract implementation with all the disadvantages of that.
Is the idea that XRPL and XRPL EVM will run in parallel, or is the sidechain, is that coming first, and then the long-term goal is to have everything move to XRP Ledger?
So today the XRP Ledger is fully operational. It's been operational since the end of 2012, the beginning of 2013. It originally had features like a DEX and issued assets, and then the feature set has grown over time to support things like NFTs and automated market makers and better support for tokenized real-world assets. The EVM sidechain is new. It's currently still in testing. It's going to go live pretty soon. But they will be two separate chains. There'll be asset portability between them with the Axelar bridge. As for how the future goes, I think what will happen is they'll complement each other. So asset portability will be pretty good. So you won't have to feel like if you pick one, you're cut off from the other. You'll be able to, if you have an application that really needs a smart contract, because you have very specific functionality that's unique to your use case, you'll be able to launch it on the sidechain. And if you have a use case that's sort of more in the 85% of mainstream use cases, like everybody wants a DEX, everybody wants automated market makers, everybody wants to issue NFTs, everybody wants loans, that functionality will be on the XRP Ledger. And then the market will decide, where the value and the activity is, but developers will have both options and will choose whatever's a better fit for their use case.
What use cases do you and markets do you envision increased programmability will unlock for XRPL?
I think there's a lot of enterprise use cases where it's just almost a one-size-fits-all, but it's not quite. So a good example would be a tokenized real-world asset. Let's say you're tokenizing treasuries or equities or something like that, or real estate. Basically what you're doing is the same thing everybody else is doing. You're issuing tokens, you're redeeming tokens, people are buying them, they're using them as collateral. It's all the same functionality that everybody else needs, and the XRP Ledger will support that type of functionality. But you might have some weird compliance rule at the margin, or some weird identity checks you have to do, or maybe there's something unusual about the way you do votes. Maybe they come with voting shares, or when you distribute dividends, there's something complicated about the way you need to do that. I think in the short term, the programmability on the XRP Ledger will solve those almost fit use cases. I don't see the XRP Ledger evolving into yet another smart contracts platform that has the same advantages and disadvantages and targets the same use cases as everything else. I think the XRP Ledger is going to stay focused in the short term on enterprise DeFi, and then over the next couple of years on all the retail use cases that enterprise DeFi will enable. It's kind of like what happened with stablecoins. Stablecoins are an enterprise product for enterprise customers directly. Like most people here if anybody here who's used USDC, you probably didn't get it from Circle, right? You got it from an exchange, or you got it from a decentralized exchange or something. So I think those same things will happen. These enterprise use cases will enable DeFi consumer use cases, and I think that's where you're going to see the XRP Ledger focusing.
Got it. So RWA is probably a big piece of this. So how are you integrating this sector?
Well, so the XRP Ledger has support for tokenized real-world assets today. Ripple has lined up a number of companies like Archax and Aberdeen who are going to be launching tokenized real-world assets, things like treasuries and things like private equity on the XRP Ledger with the existing functionality. We're looking to make that functionality better to enable some greater functionality based on what we're hearing that partners would like. One of the big things is better support for decentralized identity, especially for a smaller issuer. It's kind of tedious if you have to check everybody's identity yourself and you have to retain those identity documents. So we're looking at support for decentralized identity. We're looking at better support for things like, well, I have this tokenized treasury, I want to use it as collateral. And so we're looking at sort of adding more functionality to supplement those enterprise use cases.
Perfect. One of the, I think, biggest milestones, at least recently for Ripple, has been the launch of RLUSD, the stablecoin, recently in December. It already has 120 million around market cap, and you launched it on XRPL and Ethereum. So why did you decide on this dual chain approach?
I think part of the value proposition for a stablecoin, to some extent all stablecoins that are pegged to the dollar work the same in the short term, right? They represent a dollar and you can use them to move or hold a dollar in value. Where they distinguish themselves is the quality of the collateral, like nobody really knows where Tether's funds are or what jurisdiction they respond to. USDC is, better tied to a US jurisdiction. RLUSD is launched through a trust by the state of New York. And so there's that regulatory difference, which doesn't change the way the token functions, but it changes like its usability. But another important thing is the ability to use it sort of as a portable asset. If liquidity is just completely isolated in a small place, that makes that asset less useful. So we chose the XRP Ledger and Ethereum. Ethereum, obviously, because of its market success, it's a very big place where people are using stablecoins as a DeFi enabler, not just as a store of value, but as a DeFi enabler. If you look at like the growth of DeFi on Ethereum, it's come as stable coins like Tether and Circle USDC have been locked up. So I think like those are the platforms where people are using stable coins. The XRP Ledger has had a bit of a problem of sort of a lack of a high quality USD stablecoin. So having RLUSD on there, I think is important to have sort of like a long tail of other assets. One of the problems with only having cryptocurrencies as sort of counter currencies is they're very volatile. So imagine if you want to launch a euro-based stablecoin, and the only way you can make liquidity is to Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin can change 5% in a day. So you need active market making to sort of peg it. And if it's a sort of a long tail project where there's a whole bunch of assets that you want to provide liquidity, you need a really high quality stablecoin to be the sort of anchor for that long tail so that you don't have a situation where the price of Bitcoin goes up a couple percent and every token just gets dragged up with it. Or, I mean, I guess it's okay when they get dragged up, the holders won't mind, but they'll get dragged down too, and it will mean that effectively when you're trying to hold a euro stablecoin, you're subject to the volatility volatility of the cryptocurrencies that liquidity is made to. And so having a high quality stablecoin on the XRP ledger will kind of help balance that out. But you really don't want just one. I think there's room in the market for a number of stablecoins. Like, it makes no sense to build a DeFi ecosystem on a decentralized censorship-resistant layer one when one company is holding all of the collateral that makes all the value work.
Right.
So multi-chain.
Yeah, so RLUSD will enable more DeFi use cases on XRPL, but I imagine you'd also want to integrate with the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem. How do you see that, just integration with broader DeFi for RLUSD?
I hope enterprises will come to appreciate the fact that it's launched through a New York State trust, which I think is about the gold standard for anchoring a currency to the US dollar. It's Ripple's been in the blockchain space for a very long time now. We have a solid balance sheet that backs the things that we do. So I hope that people will see it as a solid, as a solid option, and find that it's competitive to things like Tether and USDC. It's early days. The market is growing. I don't think we necessarily need to try to compete to take market share away from other stablecoins. I think the space is growing. I think as long as there's good availability and people are confident that it's pegged, I think it will gain market share, again, because I think diversity is extremely important in building something that really is a decentralized experience.
Definitely. You recently shared an update on XRPL's institutional DeFi roadmap. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so we've been doing two things. Ripple's sort of philosophy is that the next growth phase for blockchains is around enterprise DeFi. And by which I mean, think like stablecoins are an enterprise product. Tokenized real-world assets are an enterprise product. But they're growing on layer one blockchains for two reasons. One of them is very stupid, but it's true. It's actually cheaper to launch a tokenized real-world asset on a blockchain than through the traditional, you would have to get a provider to hold the database for you. You would have to have regular audits. Well, blockchains are very easy to audit. They're very transparent. They're very cheap. Believe it or not, a major driver for enterprise adoption for tokenized real-world assets is that the transaction fees are smaller. And it sounds ridiculous because the amounts of money that they're dealing with seem very large. It's well, it's $5 million. It's a $5 million position. How does a transaction fee make a difference? But if you're holding $5 million in tokenized treasuries, the amount of margin that the issuer is making is microscopic. Your yield is microscopic. The margins are microscopic. So we're going to bring enterprises in for dumb reasons. It saves them money, it's more transparent. They're not going to understand that it's going to do the same thing that stablecoins do. People use stablecoins for use cases that they could never use any other asset for. You can't use a non-on-chain asset as collateral for some DeFi application. And what's going to happen is they're going to learn that by tokenizing these real-world assets, all of a sudden they're going to realize that they can target brand new use cases, brand new applications, brand new user base. So the strategy is to add the features necessary to get that enterprise adoption that paves the way for mass retail adoption. We're not going to see mass retail adoption of DeFi in the next year or year and a half because all of the DeFi applications are basically gambling. I mean, they're either recreational applications or gambling applications. If we want to take over finance, we need the really boring, I need a checking account, I need a savings account, I need a retirement account, I need a stock portfolio, I need sensible investments, I need the equivalent of certificates of deposit. We have to build all the boring stuff, and enterprises are what's going to make that possible. So the strategy is, over the next year and a half to 2 years, bring in the enterprises with these features around tokenized real. They're going to do it for dumb reasons. Some of them will be visionaries. Some of them will see this vision and they'll come to blockchains because they understand that it's revolutionizing finance. But a lot of them will be here just because it's cheaper and faster and it works on weekends and it has these tiny little advantages that are better is better, right? If I go to you and I say I have something better, you don't have to believe me that it's going to change the world. It's enough for you that it's better. And then hopefully in a year and a half to 2 years, we can really turn that corner to sort of mass retail adoption because we'll have more than than just, porn and gambling and gaming and collectibles. Not that those things are not nice. They're great. I mean, I understand the path to where you want to go is not always a straight line, right? Like the internet grew on, well, porn and gambling was a significant fraction of the growth of the internet, but today we use it for everything, and so the path is not always a straight line, and I don't think it's as indirect as that, but I think like the boring enterprise adoption is what we're going to need if we're going to get that retail adoption.
And to wrap up, I'd love your long-term view or vision on how that on-chain future looks like and what role XRPL plays in it.
So I think long-term, the XRP ledger is it's going to be something specific. It is not going to try to be everything to everyone. I think Ethereum, to some extent, tried to be everything to everyone, and by many metrics was more successful than the XRP ledger. I'm not knocking it. I mean, that's a great model. But the XRP ledger is kind of is a little bit more focused around specific use cases, and in exchange, it's faster, it's cheaper, it scales better, and you don't have that risk of agreeing to a smart contract where you don't necessarily know what it's going to do. And I think it's going to retain its identity, and I think it's going to target the sort of mass real-world use cases that are going to drive volume. So, for example, NFTs happen first on fully programmable chains, because someone could write a smart contract to implement an NFT, and they can get an implementation very, very quickly. The XRP ledger tends to be a little bit slower because there's a curation process by which it has to be adopted as a function, but when those functions are adopted, they're best in class. So I think you're going to continue to see best-in-class functionality for things like tokenized real-world assets, portfolios of loans, collateral, and all the boring financial products like, savings accounts, checking accounts, asset portability, and I'm hoping that that's going to give it a significant position in this sort of as tech comes to eat finance and builds new versions of all of the TradFi products, I'm hoping the XRP ledger can sketch out a big position, first on the enterprise side and then in the retail side as we get retail adoption of like usable, real world, practical DeFi solutions to like real world problems.
Awesome. Thanks so much, David. Exciting to see more programmability come to Ripple and XRPL.
Thanks for doing this, Camilla. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.